The former member for Wentworth, Dave Sharma, has blamed the loss of his seat on the unpopularity and dislike of Scott Morrison and is quoted as saying he was tarred with that brush. Mr Sharma says the Liberal Party should not expect to ever form government again if it shifts further to the right. He also claimed his successor, the independent MP, Allegra Spender, will have limited relevance in Parliament.
When you spoke to people, it was sort of not empirical. It was almost, visceral, their reaction. They would say, that he's too religious. They didn't like that he carried coal into Parliament one time. That they didn't believe his sincerity on climate change. They didn't like our handling of Brittany Higgins and Grace Tame, Brittany Higgins' rape allegations and Grace Tame's comments, those sorts of things.
Well, that was Dave Sharma on radio this morning. Well, let's bring in his successor, the new member for Wentworth, Allegra Spender. Allegra, good morning to you. Thanks for your time this morning. So you just heard those comments and you've no doubt seen them this morning by Dave Sharma, who especially lined you up by saying you will have limited leverage or relevance in the next Parliament. He named Zali Steggall as an example. What's your reaction to that?
Look, I think, I'm sure Dave Sharma's feeling a bit sad, so I'll give him that credit. I think this is a great opportunity for independents and the crossbench to have really significant relevance in the next party. I think what we have shown is that climate is an issue that Australia wants to see the climate wars ended, and I think that the crossbench is a bulwark and will be an absolute advocate for strong action on climate change, but also on those issues that were also really important to the community, in the hustings. And certainly for a big one for me was integrity. This is both about a strong federal ICAC with teeth, but it also is about donation reform. It's about lies and political advertising. As people, were very concerned, I think, about those recent text messages by Clive Palmer and the United Australia Party, and also about how we make sure we administer grants for the best interests of the whole country, not for the best interests of marginal seats. I think those are going to be some of the issues that, as an independent, and I'm sure that the crossbench will be supporting and driving really, really hard.
Labor looks like it will form a majority on its own right, though, so it won't need you or any of the Teals. Doesn't that back up Dave Sharma's comments?
Look, I think what it does is to say that I'm not the opposition. I think that Labor has indicated it wants really to work very constructively with the Parliament, and I think that it will see that it's long, if it's got a multi-term future, it's going to have to work very closely with the crossbench in a very constructive way. And so I expect that will be certainly the approach that Labor will be taking. And as I've always said, my job is not to be the opposition. My job is to support good policy from wherever it comes, and also to develop that. And that's what I will be doing. I'll be holding the government to account, and I'll be making sure that I put forward strong ideas that are constructive and useful in the Parliament.
You've got Liberal Party in your blood, Allegra. Dave Sharma says the Liberal Party will never form government if it shifts to the right. Do you agree with him on that point?
Look, I think it's probably right. I think honestly, when you again look at the crossbench, there are 7, 8, 9 crossbenchers who are in typically Liberal seats, and those communities are saying we want strong action on some issues which the government failed to take action on, things like climate change, integrity, also women. And if the coalition continues to shift to the right, the chances of getting those seats back are very, very low. And then what is the Liberals' path or the coalition's path to government? It has a long way to go. So I think it has to think really carefully about where it goes now and go back to those Liberal roots of small L Liberal, because that's what the community of Wentworth is asking for. They're asking for socially progressive, environmentally focused, but also very economically rational, focused on business. That's the expectation that the community has of the coalition.
Would you ever switch?
No, I'm here at the moment as a crossbencher, and I'm really, really proud to be there, and I'm absolutely proud to be an independent. I think this is what the Parliament needs, is actually strong independence, holding the government to account on key issues, and making sure we're working constructively with the whole Parliament to get the best outcomes for each community.
You want a 50% cut to emissions by 2030. Labor says it won't go higher than 43%. Is that enough? Is that acceptable for you?
Look, I think they need to go further. And what I think I think what they should do is work on those practical policies that could push us further. If business believes there's a real commitment, and I do think the business community I've spoken to feels there's real commitment now to strong climate action. I think business is willing to go faster. And you look that with the Business Council of Australia, their own report shows that they believe we can get to 46 to 50% by 2030. So I urge the government to work very constructively with business, very pragmatically and practically about how they can go further on this.
Right, well, the Greens may well hold the balance of power. That's in the Senate. It's got higher climate targets. So do you believe it should stick to its own rather than just accept Labor's policy?
Look, I think that I'm going to leave that one to the Greens, but my view is that we can go further. Business believes we can go further, and if the government works really practically with business, then we can get better outcomes for Australia. And that's also about the science. The science says that the world needs to cut emissions by 50% at least by 2030 to keep warming, in the 1.5 to 2 degrees. And I think we should be listening to the science and to business on this.
Just on a final one here on business, you are, of course, a successful businesswoman in your own right. What is your message to the new Treasurer, Jim Chalmers, to help ease that debt and deficit burden?
Look, I think it's as somebody, I've worked in education and health, and I think as well as business, I think we always need to look at, the answers to all question isn't more money. Sometimes we actually just need to deliver better services, and we have to be cleverer about how we do that. So I think that has to be the first approach. Secondly, I think that we need to look at some of those key drivers of productivity and things that hold business back. Things like we need to up the migration levels in the next 2 years, because that's absolutely crucial to business right now. But we also need to look at regulation and red tape and say, how do we make it easier for businesses to be truly productive? So these are some of the things I would be encouraged Jim Chalmers to do, because it's both about helping businesses grow, but it's also about using government money and doing it and going further with it. And finally, cut those fossil fuel subsidies, $10 billion.
Okay. Thanks for your time this morning, Allegra. I should have said congratulations at the start for your victory. Are you excited? Are you excited to start?
Thanks, Peter. Yeah, I'm really, really excited. And, I've lived in Wentworth my whole life, and I'm very proud to be serving and looking very much forward to working with the community and, the amazing volunteers, but actually the whole community on really standing up for Wentworth.
Okay. Allegra Spender, thanks again for your time. We'll talk to you again soon.